everybody, it's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty, and this is the start of our series on Walter Teaches Me how to make one of these, a shirt. There could be bloodletting, okay? There could be screaming, there could be shouting, there could be cursing, and there could be a lot of hilarity. So heaven only knows, because I have never made a shirt in my life. And Walter's never really taught anybody either in his life. So, with all that said, before we get started, let's talk about general announcements. Neither one of us have anything really to show you this week because you've seen all my stuff during the last two videos that I made this week on my vlog and the Idiot Quilter. And Walter's still working on a shirt, but just hasn't been any progress on in 2 weeks. So, yeah. So, anyways, you'll notice that we've got a different setup for this. This is not easy. My sewing room isn't a bad size, but when it comes to video production, it's a little cramped, and I've been fooling around for the last 2 hours trying to get microphones set up. So that's what you see down here in front of you are Yetis. And I'm not going to pretend that the sound is not what I would really like the sound to be, but it's the best we can do. You'll be able to hear us. You might hear a little bit of crackling in the background. That's possibly because I've got a 3D printer going, even though I have noise suppression set on these microphones. But anyways, I really need to invest in some wireless mics, I think, at some point in time. But, and then this is a stand here for when we switch cameras so you can see what's down in front of us. So don't worry if those microphones are in your way, and they are in your way right now, because this is not the view you're going to see throughout all of this. But now that I've put in all the excuses for this and procrastinate before I get shown how to do this, some announcements. Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen, Wednesdays as usual, 9 a.m. start time. Come and go as you please. That's Eastern time. Okay. And this Saturday, 2 days time, October the 5th, Saturday, October the 5th, 2024, just in case somebody's watching this in 2034. It is registration time for the Idiot Quilter Fall Retreat, which takes place on October the 19th. But registration opens at 9 a.m. this Saturday, October the 5th. All you need to do is send me your name, first and last. Real names, please, only. No aliases, no short forms. Well, the usual name you go by and you want to be called by. But don't give me something like, Alligator Swamp 1 or something like that, because I won't register you under that name. I need your real name. It's a security issue. And, I will not accept registration requests via email before 9 a.m. this coming Saturday, so keep that in mind. If you send it at 5 to 9, I will ignore it. Sorry. I have 95 places, and they will fill up relatively quickly. Once your registration has come in with your first and last name, as I've already said, and the email address you want to be contacted at, and I imagine in most cases it will be the email that you sent your registration request to me. But if it's different from that, then put that in the body, and I will get you registered, which reserves your spot, and I will send you a confirmation email at some point. You'll get it within a couple of hours, if not sooner. It depends on how busy I get with the registrations, as I don't want to screw anything up, and it's very easy to screw things up, or at least it's very easy for me. So, yes, you will get a confirmation, and you will be getting more information once you're registered in another week's time that has the whole agenda for the day and everything that we're doing. If this is the first time you're hearing about the event, there is a link in the show notes for a video I made about this a couple of weeks ago. It's still there. It's still active. Check it out. And it is free. It is absolutely free, but you have to reserve your spot. And do pay close attention to the blacklist, because I do use the blacklist. And the blacklist essentially is for those people who signed up, took a spot, never showed up on the day of. You are blacklisted. You will never be given the opportunity to come to one of my retreats again. And believe me, that's worse than death itself. It is, really. Yes. Okay, so that's all the announcements. So what do we got here? Well, we've got 2 fabrics, but I'm only making 1 shirt. And there's a reason for that. So just before Walter starts to do some explanations of all of these, a little bit about our procedure. In today's video, we're going to concentrate on reading the pattern and cutting the pattern out. We will not bore you to tears with every little minuscule cut that I make with my rotary cutter on this. Walter will get me started. Then I will probably continue to cut out pieces, but come back periodically and to talk about what's going on or show you some stupid mistake that I've made or whatever. So we have got in front of us two fabrics. Let me switch my camera over. There you go. You can see the two fabrics. So originally this is the fabric I picked out to do my shirt. It's lovely. It's peacock feathers and things like that. But that's not what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using this, and Walter's going to explain to you why we're not using this fabric. Go for it.
Okay, well, when I always take these any fabric that I use for a shirt, and I pre-wash my fabric, and then I iron it afterwards. And I was preparing the fabric for Steve by ironing it last night, and I realized that this fabric, some of the fabrics are directional, where you might have like if you do pictures of cats or something like that. You want to make sure the heads look upright on your shirt at the front. So sometimes it's directional how you have to cut out your fabric. Well, when I was ironing this fabric and I was taking it apart, I realized that the feathers did not go in the normal pattern that I would cut in, and that the fabric sort of looked like stripes, right? And stripes can be a bit of a problem when you're doing a shirt. And depending on which way you want the stripes to work. So normally I would cut down the selvage. You're supposed to cut on the straight of grain. And if I had directional fabric, often that works out okay upside and right side down, going along the straight of grain. But in this case, you would have to decide whether you want your stripes to go up and down or sideways. Right? So your stripes go sideways or up and down. And it depends on which way you cut the fabric.
Let's just hold up here for just a second to make sure everybody can see this in the camera. That when we first picked this fabric out, we didn't really realize there was definitely what looks like a stripe. So you can see it. The dark area is a stripe. That's what we're talking about. And for the first time for me doing a shirt, I don't need any complications.
Well, not only that, you also kind of have to plan your pattern pieces out so that they don't look strange that your stripes don't look strange on the front of the shirt or on the back of the shirt or something like that, depending on which way you go. So we decided that this was a little bit too complicated to do for a first-time shirt pattern. And we want Steve to have a good result. So
yes,
I decided that this was not a good first choice for fabric.
So that one is going to be saved for a future project.
So now I've chosen another fabric that I recently purchased. It is called Hoffman California International Fabrics, and it's called the Spectrum print, and the actual fabric's called Painted Prism. So this one is a sort of a non-directional fabric, and you can cut it any which way. And so I will show Steve the traditional way that I would cut the fabric, and as if it was directional, but it is not directional.
Okay. So one term you used, you called it the straight of grain. There may be a few people that aren't familiar with straight of grain. And that basically means straight of grain, the fabric has less stretch when you cut along it. And you know where the straight of grain is on a piece of fabric if you have the selvage attached to it, because the straight of grain runs parallel to the selvage.
Now the other alternative, if you have a directional fabric, is to cut across horizontally on the fabric, and there might be a little bit more stretch to that fabric, but it is the other alternative to cut. But you should not be cutting diagonal on the fabric, because then you'll have the
that's called the bias.
The bias. You should not be cutting your patterns on the bias. So.
And probably most of you know that, especially if you're a quilter. We know that we try to stay away from cutting on the bias unless we're doing it for a very specific purpose, because it creates stretch, and that can cause us problem in our quilts, especially by borders. But we're not doing a quilt, we're doing a shirt. Okay, so that figures out why we're using, or explains why we're using this particular fabric instead of the other one we originally picked. What was next?
Next, I wanted to go over the pieces of the pattern that we have, and maybe a few of the markings that are on the pattern pieces, just to describe them. And I'll start off with the different. There aren't that many pattern pieces to worry about, but you have in the first piece we have to cut out is your front right and left pieces, and this is represented by one piece of the pattern. So you would end up cutting out one facing forward and one in reverse. And you can do that if you can achieve that by folding your fabric and just cutting out two layers of fabric, one folded under the other.
And then you would cut the fold.
Right, and then you would cut the fold. Now, on this particular piece, there is actually two pieces here. The original pattern had a separate button band that runs down the top front of your front piece, where you attach your buttons to. And instead of cutting out a separate piece, I've decided to glue this piece to the front using the 3/8. All the shirt is all sewn together with a 3/8 inch seam, and I've attached this button band to the front of the shirt with a 3/8 inch seam, so that we can just cut this out all as one piece, and I don't have to worry about sewing this extra piece on.
Now, why would they, though, expect you not to cut it out as a separate piece? Why would they?
Well, for instance, if you wanted to have a different color for your button band than the rest of your shirt.
And the button band you're talking about down here on the front of the shirt, right? Where all your buttons are. That's the button band.
Yeah,
okay.
Your button band is where your buttons end up, and your buttonholes end up. Okay. One side has the buttonholes on it, and the other side has your buttons on it. So this right now facing up is your left side of your shirt, and then the reverse of it would be the right side of your shirt.
And the buttons on a man's shirt go on the right. So
the buttons are sewn on the right side, and the buttonholes are on the left side. Okay. Now, I've altered this pattern a little bit because the original pattern has a little indent here, and it's meant for a more Western style shirt, and I don't really like that, so I've decided to square off the shirt to give a more traditional shoulder piece on it rather than a Western style. I've done that as well. So these are two alterations that I've made.
Okay, so let me get this straight with this piece of the pattern. What we have here is one of the front panels of the shirt,
right,
plus the button band attached to it. Okay, and we need two of these, but they are opposite directions. That's why we're going to fold the fabric in half and cut this pattern once, and then cut on the fold, so we have a left side and a right side.
Now, on all these pieces, you will notice, this one's not as prominent, but on the, let's say the button band here, you have an arrow line, and it's a solid arrow line with two little arrowheads on either side. And what that indicates is the straight of grain, right? So you should be cutting this on the straight of grain, if possible.
So parallel to the selvage.
Right, parallel to the selvage. And most of your pieces will show that marking. Now, there is also a waistline indication here. If you decide you want to shorten the shirt, you're suggested to fold it there and make it shorter if you decide to do that.
Okay, so if you were to make it, we're not going to do that for this,
no.
But I'm a little confused why they call that a waistline. My waist isn't up there.
No, I know, but this is just to indicate if you want to shorten the shirt, this is the area that you should do it.
Okay.
Okay, so, if your shirt hangs down way too low, right, the finished product, if you want to, let's say, take it up an inch or two, they recommend to fold it here so that it doesn't disturb the rest of the flow of the shirt.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
Okay, we're not doing that.
We're not doing that, so we're not going to, I have to admit, I'm still a little confused about that. looking at that line, I don't understand. But we don't need to worry about that because we're not going to do that. So
No.
Okay.
Okay, but that, if somebody sees something like that, that's what it is. Now, the other markings that you have to be concerned with is at the armhole here. This is the armhole. There is a little mark there to cut a little, what do you call it, indent?
A dart?
A dart. There, it's not really a dart. It's a, you have to cut a notch. Sorry, you have to cut a notch there. And what this will indicate is the front of the sleeve. And you'll, on the sleeve, that when you cut it out, you'll have a notch on there too. You'll have a single notch at the front and 2 notches at the back.
So when I cut out this piece, do I take some kind of marking tool and mark that, or do I cut in?
Yeah, you cut in a little notch that's less than 1/4 of an inch at this spot after you've cut the fabric out. And that, when you're sewing it together, you'll know that this is the front piece of your fabric. Okay. And there's really only there's different areas where they show where that you might want to notch it, but you don't have to do each one. I only use the ones on the sleeve and the ones that indicate the fold on the back. So we'll indicate that as we're doing it.
Now, before you move away from this, I noticed some other markings on this pattern, which are probably hard to see in the camera, but there's, along some of the lines, there's a pair of scissors. So I'm assuming that means that's a cut line.
No, that is not. This is where you attach your PDF pattern together.
Oh,
okay. These little scissor marks that are on here is when I pasted this whole pattern came out as a PDF pattern, and each of the, you'll notice the big 10 here and the big 11 here. Those are the actual pages from the PDF pattern. And the little scissors that are here is the cut lines for the pages when you're pasting this together.
Oh, okay.
So by this point in time, these little scissor marks and that you ignore on the pattern.
Now, what about the dotted lines?
Now, the dotted lines on here, they call this the fold line for folding your button band, because your button band won't actually be this wide. You'll end up folding it because you're going to interface this section of the button band. So we won't worry about the fold line because I have a process on how to do the button band, and it may not exactly fall into where the fold line is, but it'll work.
Okay, so what's next?
Okay, the next piece we have is the back piece. And this is your back, and it's all one piece. But what happens is they've only given us half of the back. And you cut this on a fold, but you don't cut fold.
Oh, okay. So that explains why it says here, one back, cut one on fold main.
Right. And you'll see, notice the front says front, cut 2 main. Okay. So on this, it says cut 1 on fold main. So this ends up becoming twice the size of the front.
Okay. Why do they use the word main?
I do not know. On main fabric, probably, if you were using 2 colors or something.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so what you do is, and it also indicates that you're cutting out a fold, because here you have a straight of grain arrow, but it points in. Here, I'll take this one away. A straight of green arrow, but there's a little arrow that points to the edge, and that indicates cut at fold.
Okay.
That indicates that you have to have a fold there, and that you're going to have a double size pattern. So you're going to have one piece of fabric that goes right across.
Okay.
Okay. And again, you have 2 notches at the top here. And this is a fold that you need to do at the top to gather the top of the fabric in, so that you'll it's a little bit skinnier at the top than it is at the bottom.
So you said that's a fold? You just called it a notch.
Yeah, there's 2 notches.
Right.
Right, and at this point you fold the fabric together. So if you look at the back of your shirt, you would have a little fold here.
We do?
I don't have one there.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, I see what you're talking about. Like a little pleat.
A pleat, yeah.
Okay, so the idea is that's where you bring the fabric, when you get to piece cut out, you would bring your fabric over to touch those two marks.
Yeah, well, when you're actually sewing it together, you'll end up doing this. Sorry, you'll end up doing this with your thing.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then you'll end up with a little fold. You probably can't see that very well, but you'll end up with a little fold at the back of your shirt. If you look at the back of most shirts, you'll have a little pleat in the back there.
Okay. Well, here, let me switch the camera over a second. Okay, so show it on my shirt.
Okay, right here, you might not see it very well. There's a little pleat on the back of the shirt, and that's where it is. So you'll notice that the back goes all the way across, even though the width of the pattern is only the width of half the size. And then if you turn around the two front pieces here, you've got a front piece here and a front piece there. And this is your button band where you have your buttons on one side.
Please, maybe later.
And your a buttonhole on this side.
Crispy here on the camera. Wow. Crispy.
Okay. So you've got your back piece, one back piece, and two front pieces. Right? Okay. And then the next piece we have is called the yoke. This is the yoke. And this is the upper piece of your shirt. And okay,
I'll just switch the camera over so.
Okay, so we have this yoke, and you may say, "Well, that looks strange. It only is that looks like a quarter of the shirt," but actually, they have this arrow here again to cut on the fold. So what ends up doing is you cut this on the fold, right? And it's like the back piece; it becomes a wider piece.
Well, wait. Okay, you say cut on the fold, but in a sense, what you're doing is you're folding the fabric in half, and then you're cutting the one piece, but you're not going to cut that fold.
No, you're not cutting the fold. When you have the arrow, it means that you're cutting on a folded piece of fabric, but then when you don't cut at the fold. You're just cutting it so that you'll have a piece that folds out. Right.
And I noticed another marking on this. There's another dotted line that runs across here. What's that mean?
I don't know.
Okay, we won't worry about that.
That probably has something to do with the neck, but I don't work with that.
Okay.
Now, since this is also part of the sleeve, there is a notch. I don't think you have to do the notch on there. No, forget that. We don't do the notch on that. Where we have this is the fold. Now, this one you'll notice it says cut 2 on fold main. So we need 2 yokes to be cut, because there's a yoke that goes on the back on the outside of the shirt, and there's a yoke that goes on the inside of the shirt.
No yoke.
Yeah. So you'll notice if you have a regular shirt, you'll notice that like on top of the back piece, this goes on top of the back piece. So you'll end up having the back piece with the yoke on top of it. Right? And then this is also becomes part of your sleeve.
Okay, pull that down a little bit towards you because it's off camera. There we go.
That will become part of your sleeve.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, and then the yoke goes, and notice the yoke's a little skinnier than the back, but we have this pleat in the middle. So when we gather it for the pleat, then these two will become the same size. And so these will be, it's a piece of fabric folded over, so it'll be, you'll have your front, left, and right yokes all together on here. And we have an outside yoke and an inside yoke. If you look at the inside of most shirts, you'll notice that there's fabric on the inside at the top. And that's the second yoke.
And why do they do that? Is that for stability or something?
That's to for creating your
shoulder seam.
Yeah, shoulder seam, and it all gives you more stability at the top of the shirt.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's the front piece is yoked up. So the next piece that you have is your sleeve. Okay, and the sleeve, you have to cut 2 of these. You don't actually cut it on a fold or anything. The sleeve is all one piece. And again, you have a straight of grain here. And then you have 3 notches that you have to cut out. There's 2 here and 1 here. And the 2 here indicate the back of the sleeve. and the one here indicates the front of the sleeve. So that's basically the sleeve. So you're cutting 2 of these, right?
Okay.
Okay, and then you have the parts of the collar. So this part of the collar is your collar part, and this is something called the under collar. Okay, if you look at a traditional collar shirt, you'll notice there's a band of fabric. Okay, if you want to switch maybe for a minute. Okay, if you look at here, the collar, that's the collar piece, and then underneath the collar you have a band of fabric that goes underneath the collar, and that's called the under collar. So this shirt has a top collar and an under collar.
Okay, so but you're only cutting one of each of those pieces.
You're cutting 2 of each of those pieces.
Okay.
Right, because you have the collar has the collar is a double collar. So if you flip your collar, it's got a pattern on both sides, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so you need 2 pieces of these, and you're cutting on the fold again, so that there's a folded piece of fabric, so that when you fold it out, you've got a long collar, right? So that's that. And sometimes you have to worry, depending on the fabric, what direction the collar is going in. Sometimes you may have to, if you've cut your main pieces out one way, you may want to reverse the way the collar is, because then if you were doing, let's say, pictures of cats or something like that, if you cut the collar out the wrong way, you may have your cats upside down.
So that it pertains then to a piece of fabric that is directional.
Right.
Whereas what we're working with, it's not going to really matter.
No, it's not going to really matter. So, and the same with the under collar, you cut 2 pieces out. So you have an inside piece and an outside piece.
Okay, when you're cutting these pieces, do you cut them both the same way? Like I notice here, you could have a left and a right. So
so what I do is I fold the fabric over once, and then cut one collar out, then move the collar over and cut a second collar out. Because if you start flipping the fabric over and start cutting through 4 layers of fabric, you may have the collar going every which way.
Okay, I'm confused now. So what? Okay, let's just talk about this collar piece. So you're going to have folded fabric to cut out that collar piece, because that'll give you 2. And you'll cut it on the fold.
No, when you cut it on the fold, you have 1 collar.
Okay.
Okay, so you have, if you cut, look, this is your fabric. Oops, sorry.
So we're not going to cut the fold.
You're not cutting the fold. Wherever you see these little arrows,
okay,
right here, you've got little arrows with a pointing to the edge. That means you're cutting on a folded piece of fabric, right? Here, you're cutting this all out, but you're not cutting the fold.
Okay.
And why you don't cut the fold is when you flip it out, when you take your piece out, it becomes a piece that's longer. It's a piece that's twice the size.
And you'll have your points going in opposite directions.
Right.
Okay.
So this becomes one thing. This is called the collar stand. And the same with the collar. You do this as well. And you cut this out. But then when you fold it out, you'll have a longer collar, because your collar is actually twice that size, right? Okay. But you're going to have to cut 2 of these and 2 of these.
Okay.
Okay, now the last piece, which I have not addressed, is the pocket. And because I usually match the pocket to the front of the shirt, I don't cut this out until I need to use it. Okay, and the pocket itself will end up being folded. This looks weird for a pocket, but it ends up getting folded here, because this shows you the pocket with all the seams on it. So your pocket will end up getting folded, and then your seams will be folded at 3/8 of an inch all the way around.
Okay. Well, we'll come to that little.
We'll worry about the pocket later. The pocket again shows your grain line on here, there's I for just my own purposes, I know where the pocket has to be placed, so I wrote where it needs to be placed on the front of the pocket, just to remind me where it needs to be placed.
Okay. So I have sort of the idea now of what you're talking about with pattern pieces. So are we now at the point where we should start cutting?
Yes.
Okay, what do we cut first?
I usually start with the front two pieces. And what basically we need to do is lay this fabric out. And let's, why don't we cut this off and till I get the fabric laid out.
Okay, we will be back. Okay, so Walter's been fooling around with the fabric to get it ready for our first cut, which is the front panels. And explain what's going on here. What are we doing?
Okay, so instead of folding the entire fabric all the way across in half, we'd end up having this big gap of fabric left over.
So
right?
Waste, you mean?
It's a waste, and plus later on we need to match the pocket. So I like to have as much extra fabric as I can for the pocket.
And just before you go on, how much fabric do we actually have here that we're working with?
I have 3 meters. The minimum for this particular shirt for our size is 2.5 yards. Okay. But I like to have extra fabric. I do not cut this fabric the most efficient way possible because I just have gotten myself doing it this way. I don't really care.
In other words, we're not worried about.
I mean,
we're not going to have a lot of waste, but there's going to be maybe a little bit more waste than some people might be comfortable with. So just
most of the shirts I do have a directional pattern. This one doesn't really have a directional pattern, so that we could actually cut this out in a more efficient manner. And if you look at the actual pattern, the Gosling pattern, it does give you a direction as to how to place your pieces on the fabric for cutting. And if you're cutting a non-directional fabric, there are ways that you can place your pattern pieces in such a way where you do not waste any fabric.
And I think that's something else we did not mention. Someone's going to ask, what is this pattern? It's called the Gosling?
Yeah, the pattern is called the Gosling. You can look it up. It's from a company called So Deaf, but it is sold under different places in Canada. You can look it up at a place called Thread Theory. And in the U.S., if you just do a search on the internet for the Gosling sewing shirt, men's shirt sewing pattern, you can bring it up, and it's a PDF pattern. You can download it and stick it all together like we did, and it comes in various sizes, anything from I believe a small to a 2 times double X.
And what size are we cutting out?
2 times double X. We both wear large shirts, and
but not usually two
double X. You will find that when you do a shirt pattern or any kind of clothing pattern, that your actual body measurements do not necessarily correspond to the size of clothing that you wear off the rack. You will find that you will have to cut out a bigger pattern than what you're used to wearing from shirts on the rack because of the way they're designed.
Think classic fit as opposed to your skinny fit.
We do tend to be a bit roomy with this shirt. We could probably go down to a 1X. But I like the roominess of the shirt, and Steve likes the roominess of the shirt, and that's why
room to grow in.
That's why I have chosen this size.
Okay, so you've got the fabric laid out for this first panel we're going to cut. These are my version of pattern weights. They just hold the pattern down on your fabric so it doesn't move around, and then you pinned it, right?
Yeah, and then, well, actually, alternatively, you can just pin it. I like pinning it because it keeps my pattern all together. It keeps my pattern all together as one piece. Once I've cut it out, the pattern's attached, and then when I need to use it, I can just unpin it.
Okay. Anything else we know about laying the pattern down before we start?
Okay, now what I've done is I've scooched my fabric over so that I save a little bit of fabric. And I mean, the alternative way is if I can also do it so that I fold the fabric down and have it the other way around. But I've decided to do it this way. This is how I always do my shirts. And what I also did is I have it placed near the edge, but not right on the edge. And the reason is since this is a front piece, we're actually cutting on the fold here. So because these will become two separate pieces in reverse direction. So so this fabric is folded, as you see, and we'll end up cutting two pieces on the front.
So we have a fold in the fabric right here, and we've got the pattern about a little less than maybe a 1/4 inch away from the edge of that fold.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to have Steve start cutting this out.
Now, what am I cutting it with?
You're cutting it with a rotary cutter. You're actually using a 45 inch.
Yeah, 45 millimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to find mine because I never use a 45. I always use a 60 millimeter.
Why
are we doing it with a 45?
Well, that's actually my favorite size, but you can do it with a 60 if you want.
I was going to say, no, I think I'll stick to the 45, but I was going to say probably because the 45 might be a little bit easier because you do have a few curves you got to go around.
Yeah. Now, what I'm suggesting to Steve to do is, well, he can go as far as he wants, as he's comfortable cutting with. But often what I do is I'll cut the piece like up here, and then I'll cut an inch all the way across down here around the selvage or on the selvage, so that I can take this fabric away and then we can spin it around and cut the rest of it out easier.
So, how close to the pattern do I need to cut?
You need to cut as close to the pattern as you can without
cutting the pattern.
Without cutting the pattern.
Oh my God. Okay. Here we go. What?
No, go ahead. Let's go ahead. Just do whatever you can, and I'll fix it. No, fix it.
I'm sure you've done this a few times, you get a little faster. And I would say you want to have a really sharp rotary blade for this. Now, should I cut right?
Keep going straight.
To the selvage?
To the selvage. Okay, here. Then what you do is you take this. Okay, make sure you've cut. Okay, there we've cut. Okay. And because this is open, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what I normally do is just go along here.
Okay. But you're going to fine tune that after that. Just gets rid of the big piece
of
fabric.
Gets the big piece. And then what we can do is we can spin this around so that now you can cut up here a little easier.
So it's like that song about kitties. Kitties are so very nice. Spin them round. Spin them twice. This is from the Trailer Park Boys. If I ever watched that show. Okay, so I'm trying to be very, very careful that I don't cut into the pattern. Can I just cut that off?
Yeah, cut it off. We don't care about that.
Okay. And then I'll just spin this around so I can get at it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Well, so much for that. Just wrecked a paper weight or a pattern weight. Guess those weren't really my best creation. Oops.
Straight up. Okay, now spin it. You can use a ruler on this piece. We're just cutting a straight piece now.
Ouch.
Yeah,
myself.
The hazards of putting pins and things. Okay.
Okay.
So now you can cut off the fold by using ruler.
Okay.
Just use it in two pieces. You don't have to do it all in one piece.
Okay. Fine.
Oh, wait, hang on.
No,
We
yeah.
don't want
You
you
want to
slice
cut the other
into
pieces of the pattern. Ta-da!
So now you've cut out the two front pieces. Let's say the other side is all cut out, and then this side is cut out.
Okay, now, do you leave the pattern pieces on until you come time to sew?
Yeah, I usually do. And also you want to do is you want to notch this little front piece here, and I have a handy dandy little notcher for
What,
that.
you have a special tool?
I have a notcher. It's actually a leather notcher.
Ooh, leather.
Oh.
Oh, look at that. Oh, never seen one of those before.
So a little leather notcher. And all we do
here, hold it up to the camera so people can see. No, that's the camera over there. But that's what it looks like.
You can just buy them on Amazon. I saw it one time and I thought, well, that might look handy. And it is very handy. So I use it to notch my fabric. So we just take it.
And there's that notch line that's on the pattern.
I didn't pin it there.
Maybe you should put a pin in there. Yeah. Put a pin in that.
Okay. So we'll have the fabric here, and I just take the notcher, stick it in between there, and I just snap it, and it gives me a notch.
Ooh! Look at that. Hold that up so that the people can see.
In my notch.
Okay, right there. Right there's the notch. Okay.
Now that indicates the front of the sleeve.
Okay.
Okay, so that's...
Which will be important when we sew it together.
Right.
But at this point, we don't care.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just fold that and put it away.
And so what's the next piece we're going to cut?
The back piece.
Okay, before you do what? So
let's cut out, and I have to refold the fabric.
And I have to pick up my pennies that were in my weight that have all crushed on the floor. Okay, we shall be back in a flash. Okay, so Walter's laid out this is what, the back piece?
Yeah, this is the back piece.
Okay, so explain what's happening here with this.
Okay, see, in the front pieces, we were cutting two separate pieces, one for the left and one for the right. Now we're cutting a single piece. And this time, we're not going to cut the fold. The pattern scooched right up against the fold. So, in the double part of the foot, the fabric's folded in half. And
we've taken wonder clips and secured the pattern right at the edge of the fold.
Right. So what we'll do is, Steve will do is cut fabric the same way as he did the front, all the way around like this. But we're not cutting the fold this time because it'll be one wide piece that goes across the back of the shirt. So you don't really probably need to do this on camera because it'll take you a little while to get around.
Yeah, probably.
But it'll be the same
but the same thing. I'm just going to go
the front. He'll go all the way around and around. But he won't be cutting the fold.
But won't be cutting the fold. Okay.
And we'll be also notching 2 notches on the back here. Of course, you can't see that, but 2 notches in the back, and that's where that's showing the back of the armhole.
Okay. Which I'm sure will be important when we get to the point of assembling the shirt.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that then. Okay, so I've cut it out, but now Walter's talking about notches.
Yeah, there's 2 notches that are on the top here, and that's for your pleats in the back. And then there's 2 notches to indicate the armhole. So the 2 notches in the back for this will indicate where your pleat is, and these 2 notches will match up with your sleeve.
Now, just a question here. How close do you need to be when you're cutting out the pattern? Like, am I close enough here?
You're close enough.
Okay.
It doesn't matter that much because the shirt's doesn't need to be as accurate as when you're piecing for a quilt.
Okay. Another thing that I discovered was I was really pressing hard on my rotary cutter because I'm used to cutting through like 4 to 6 layers of fabric. And I'm only cutting through 2 on this, so I could go with a little lighter touch, which makes it a little easier to do a smooth cut, just a tip. So make sure you have a sharp rotary cutter. Put in a new blade. Okay, so I just put that up and push it right to as far
Don't
as...
push it as far as you can, just a little notch. And just, well, push it about halfway, because you don't want to no more than 1/4 of an inch, right?
Oh, okay. So like that?
Yeah, now make sure you have your fabric. Make sure you've cut your fabric.
Oh.
You haven't cut your fabric.
Oh, it's slipped. Okay, fine. You got that in good? Yeah, good.
That's it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Oh, you have to really cut the fabric. You have to really... The whole idea is to cut the fabric. You can do it with a pair of scissors too. You don't need the notcher. But I just find the notcher is a little easier. I always have trouble cutting it with scissors. I end up making too big. No, right there.
What? Right? Yeah, I was getting.
Oh, okay.
I was putting it on. I was making sure I had the fabric underneath here.
Yeah, good enough.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to leave that together.
Yeah.
For now. Okay. I suppose we could take the clips off though, right?
Yeah, up to you.
Because we don't really need to leave those on. I suppose it doesn't matter whether you leave them on or not. Okay, so we've got the front, we've got the back. Now what's next?
We'll have to do the yoke, so you're going to have to bear with me while I fold this fabric.
Okay, well, we'll come back. Okay, Walter, as he was manipulating this fabric, he's telling me about what would happen if we were using directional fabric, and I thought we should record that because this might be important to people. So what were you saying about where you...
Okay, normally if this fabric was directional, like most patterns often have a direction to it. And even though I've called this not directional, there may actually be some sort of direction to it once you get the pieces together, right? So this is the sleeve that we're doing, and now I've had to fold the fabric completely in half because the sleeve is pretty wide. And so we're going to be cutting 2 of these sleeves. Now the sleeve has to be cut this way because this is the straight of grain, right? And the whole sleeve has to be cut. So I'm following the straight of grain like I was normally. Like, I mean, I've done a shirt where there's kitties on it, or even that shirt, or cats' faces or whatever, and you have to cut your sleeve in the same way or same orientation as your front and your back of your shirt. So if you look at the way I cut the front and the back, like if you cut the front and the back, right, your orientation in this case is going down this way, right?
Wait, going down your orientation.
Because this will be the front of your shirt, right? So your sleeves hang down the same way,
okay,
as the front of your shirt, right?
Right.
So you need to cut your sleeve this way. Some people may think, oh, well, I'll just save fabric and I'll go this way, right? Because it.
But then your kitties would be upside down.
Yeah, then your kitties would be upside down. So you don't want to do that. And just for illustration, just for because this is the way I normally do it, we're going to cut it this way because as if there was an orientation to this fabric. And who knows, maybe there is some weird orientation that's not obvious from looking at it, that when you get the sleeves cut out, they look funny when you put it up against the front of the shirt.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
No, I don't think so either, but you never know.
Okay, so you've got that, you're laying it out, you're going to pin that there, but one thing, and we're not going to show me cutting this out because you've seen it, they're going to do it the same way, but it does say that we need to cut 2 of these.
Yes,
so could we, okay, we've already doubled the fabric over, so that means I'm going to cut this once, but I'll get 2?
Yes, you will.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back. Okay, so I've cut out my, what's this, a sleeve?
The sleeve.
And we have two of them.
Yeah.
Yes, we doubled the fabric. But we didn't do anything with the fold because we don't have a fold on here. So we just have two pieces, but we cut the two pieces at the same time.
They're two individual pieces. Because they were folded in half, you've cut the front two sides.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just trying to get this into the shot here because I got that little piece.
Now on the sleeve, as we had the notches on the front and the back side of the back.
Second here, let me see if I can. No, I can't.
You were recording?
Yeah, I'm recording, but I just was trying to get it so you could see the notches. So there's a notch here, right?
Yeah, a single notch indicating the front of the shirt. Okay.
And then
two notches
here
indicating the back of the sleeve. That's front of sleeve, and then there's the back sleeve. It's important. You don't want to mix these up.
Ask Walter how he knows. Okay, so I've done that.
Okay, so now
that piece, two sleeves are cut out. Yeah. Okay. So then we've got what? The yoke. Okay, you're caught on my.
Okay. Yeah, well, I sort of did it out of order. Actually, I usually do the yoke first, but I realized I forgot.
Well, the yoke's on you.
Yeah, so now we're going to do the yoke, because otherwise we would have had a bigger continuous piece of fabric.
Okay, so again, you're going to...
And I think I got shortchanged fabric.
This is the fabric we got at Appleseed Quilt Works up in Lindsay during the shop hop.
Yeah, because I should have more fabric left over than what I've got.
Yeah, say, people, we talked about this once. Apparently, you've got to, when you get some fabric from a place, before you cut into it and everything, measure it out to see if you've got exactly what you ordered, because mistakes happen. Not saying they were doing this on purpose, but it was busy that day in there, and maybe she just got a little confused. But we do have enough fabric, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Just don't make any mistakes when you sew the sleeve up.
Oh, God, that's asking a little much.
Okay, so
this is the yoke, right?
This is the yoke.
And we need two of these?
We need two of these, so you're going to have to cut them twice.
And it's being cut on it's going to be put on the fold, but we still need two pieces.
And I can't fold the upper part of the fabric because I've learned the hard way that there isn't enough fabric there.
Oh, okay. All right, so you're putting that down onto the fold.
And again, the orientation has to be correct.
And we know that on this piece because we've got, that's not straight.
This is a straight up part. Like this is your top part. That's your top part of your yoke and your bottom part of your yoke.
Okay, so we're going parallel to the selvage. That means we're on straight of grain.
I don't want to get too close to the edge here because I have had it so that I ended up not having enough fabric on the rear end of the side of it, and then you get ticked off. You have to recut it again.
By the way, Walter using Wonder Clips is the first time on this. It was my idea.
Yeah, on the edges, I've never done it.
I'm just on another pretty face, you know. Okay, so then you're going to pin it. I'm dropping my stuff on the floor. Now, when you're pinning, I've noticed you're flattening out your fabric too at the same when you do, so you don't have a little buckle under where your pin is. That could be
okay. So here it's easy because you can use a ruler to cut that part, and you can use a ruler to cut these two pieces,
and then just freehand. Yeah. Okay. Well, you don't need to watch me cutting this because it's the same as what I cut the other pieces. So we'll come back. So I've cut out one yoke, but I need a second yoke, and Walter says you just leave the pieces that I've already cut out pinned together and just lay it down onto your next spot on your fabric and cut from that. Are you going to, I assume, repin? So you're not going to take the pins out of the one.
I might.
Yeah. Of course, I was going to say that if you did that, it might slide more. You might be better off to just like another set of pins without removing the first ones. It would keep everything more stable. That's my theory. Okay, so
I'm probably pretty secure there.
Okay, so I'm going to cut that, so we'll come back. Okay, so we now have 2 yolks in this little package. So what are we cutting next?
We need 2 colors.
2 colors. So this has, that's the line that says you have to have a fold, right?
Right.
And you're not going to cut this fold because it has to open up.
Yeah, because it needs to be double width. Yeah, not sure I might be able to get a double fold out of that piece, but I'm not sure.
Okay, well, as Walter figures this out, we'll let him do that and we'll do that.
No, I can't do that.
Okay, so now we have 2 collar pieces in here. We didn't cut the fold, remember, because they're going to open up wider. Actually, I can show you while Walter's straightening out his fabric.
You give me the sleeve.
Okay, so here's the collar piece. And you see we didn't cut on the fold. So we have, that's the whole collar piece, and we have 2 pieces like this.
Yeah. Now we need to do the undercollar.
Okay. So where's your pattern? Or do you do it from this?
No. There's a pattern, and we just had it here.
Probably underneath the fabric.
No, I just saw it. Oh, it's way over there. It's...
Let me get that, shall I?
Okay. That's the part of it.
Excuse me, pardon me. Okay, so he's doing the same thing, and this one has to have a fold, and we need to cut 2 of those as well, the undercollar, but we're not cutting on the fold, just what we did with the collar before. Yeah. So we'll come back. Okay, so we have all our pieces cut out with the exception of the pocket piece, because we're going to do Walter's famous invisible pocket, and that means we've got to wait until we've got everything sewn together to match up the fabric with the pocket with the front panel. Now we have discovered something. We're pretty sure that where we went to Appleseed Quilt Works in Lindsay, and this is where we bought this fabric, and Walter asked for 3 meters. We don't think we got 3 meters. We have enough to do this shirt, but we can't afford a major mistake on this.
I might be able to cut another sleeve out, but I doubt it.
But we don't have that much left over. And this is something I said earlier too. You got to watch it. We think they cut it in yards.
But even in that, even if I got 2.5 yards, I should be able to get everything out of it. And now, mind you, I didn't cut it the most efficiently possible. But even when I've had like fabric I've bought from the States and I've had 2.5 yards, I've had about this much left over.
Okay, so, and I don't know, I'll have to go online to their store and see
so
if they sell
looks
meters
like,
or yards.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think of that when we were in there. And they didn't say, because I mean, you just turn around and say, well, I want 3 meters, and they give you 3 yards.
Yeah.
And you know, that's
one thing you need to do is you need to interface this, and you need to interface this.
In your face.
Right? And I use Pellon SF-101. And you also need to cut 4 strips of Pellon SF-101, the width of the Pellon SF-101, for in 2.5-inch strips. That's for the button band.
Okay.
Actually, you might be able to get away with 3, but I always cut 4.
Okay, so are we going to say that for next time, or should I do that before next time? What are we going to do next time? What's the next stage?
I would think, the next stage would be to create the button band. So I would say interface these two.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we've told you to interface them. When we get to sewing them, we'll show that we've interfaced them. And basically what it is you do...
switch the camera here.
You interface your collar stand, your two collar stands, and your two collars. And I usually use Talon SF101, but you can also use a product called Sewer's Dream, or just a lightweight iron-on woven is ideal for this kind of shirt. This is one of the reasons we also pre-wash our fabrics, so that you pre-shrink, so that when you have interfaced pieces and you throw your shirt in the washing machine, it doesn't wrinkle and shrink. Right? Okay. So that's one of the reasons you pre-wash your fabric.
And the interface we're using, which is Talon SF101, is a fusible interface.
It's a fusible interface. So you just fuse to the back of these. And then I also need 4 strips of Talon SF101 width of fabric, or width of interfacing, cut out at 2.5-inch strips. Okay. And what that will be used for is to interface the button band. So our next step will be to prepare the button band. And I don't know how far we would get after that.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. That'll be next time when we do this. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so these pieces are cut out. That wasn't too hard. Although the last piece I cut, I kind of did a chewy along the edge. So hopefully that's not going to cause us grief. And yeah, so stay tuned for the rest of this next week. And just before we go, a reminder that this Saturday, October the 5th, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, registration is open for the Idiot Quilter Fall Retreat, which happens on October the 19th. And just word of advice, if you snooze, you lose, because it fills up really quick. Okay. All right. So I think that's it. Any parting words? No. Okay. So thanks for joining us. Hope things were clear. They're clear for me. I got the idea. So which is, if I get it, you can get it. So we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye for now.